What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Jeff Benjamin with I Download Blog. I'm going to talk about 10 reasons why an Apple Watch jailbreak would be absolutely awesome. And you're going to probably agree with a lot of these different feature requests for the Apple Watch. So without further ado, let's get into reason number one. Reason number one is custom watch faces. Now, obviously, Watch OS does come with quite a few different watch faces, and you can customize them to a small degree using complications and changing up the colors and things of that nature. So there is some customization there. I don't want to make it seem like there's no customization whatsoever. And actually, you can go in and add your own watch face that's based on the pre-existing watch faces. So if you tap the little plus button there, you can add one based on these other watch faces. But that's the limit to the customization that you can have, and jailbreaking would bring a whole lot more customization to watch faces. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is pretty obvious as well: native app support. Right now, if you want to run an app on the Apple Watch, it's not actually running, so to speak, on the Apple Watch, but it's pulling data in from your iPhone. Well, if you had native applications on the Apple Watch, things would just be a lot better. Number one, they would be speedier because everything's running natively on the device itself. And number two, you could do things that you can't do right now, such as run Overcast and actually store music on Overcast itself. Another thing is that if you lose your connection to your iPhone, guess what? You can't run any of the third-party apps you have installed. So obviously you saw me just put the device in the airplane mode. Watch what happens when I launch Overcast again. This is all you're going to see. You're going to see the airplane icon with the name of the app below that, and that's for any third-party app that I open up. You're going to see the same thing because it's relying on that connection to the iPhone in order to run. But with native apps, you wouldn't have that problem at all. So that is one big thing that jailbreaking could potentially do for us in the future. Now, another thing that's a big deal, or sort of a big deal, is the timeout feature on the Apple Watch. By default, you can't change the timeout settings. So if you just wake your Apple Watch by raising your wrist, you get 6 seconds before the device times out, the screen times out. And if you actually press a button, I believe you get 14 seconds before the screen times out. But there's no way to change that whatsoever in the Apple Watch settings. You're basically just stuck with the default timeout windows. And it may be because you think the timeout windows are too long. Maybe you want to reduce the windows and save even more battery life. Or maybe you think the the windows are too short, and that's probably the general consensus when it comes to the Apple Watch. But it would be nice if you could change those. Jailbreaking, of course, would make that a possibility. Now, watch faces are nice, but what about full-fledged custom themes? Yes, I mean like changing all the app icons, changing the apps themselves, changing the tint color of some of the buttons, things of that nature. Well, that's where custom themes come into play. I'm talking about winterboard-esque themes that allow you to change the look of the entire interface, icons, and all. Now, battery life has been a hot topic of debate ever since the Apple Watch was announced, and Apple included something called Power Reserve Mode to help save battery life. But actually, I find the battery life to be really good on the Apple Watch. I never need to use Power Reserve Mode. So with that in mind, it would be nice if Apple allowed us, or jailbreakers allowed us, to do other things than use Power Reserve Mode. So instead of just completely shutting down your watch, which Power Reserve Mode does, it shuts down all features except the current time, it would be nice if we could pick and choose certain features to eliminate without going overboard and over the top like Power Reserve Mode does, and allow us to retain some of the functionality of the Apple Watch. Now, this one is kind of weird. If you've ever used Activator on the iPhone, then you know how handy that tool can be. It's like the backbone of thousands of jailbreak tweaks for a good reason. It lets you perform impressive iOS automation on its own. So with that in mind, it would be really cool if you could assign Activator gestures to the buttons on your Apple Watch and to the Force Touch on Apple Watch, so that you could execute certain things, maybe like shortcuts to specific apps, just by using certain button combinations. That would be really, really nice and save us a lot of time. Now, I've read several reviews and experiences that mention the Apple Watch Haptic Feedback and how that it's a bit lacking. The running theme is that at times it's hard to feel when the Taptic engine is trying to get your attention. Well, with the jailbreak, you could up the intensity of the Taptic engine and increase the feedback rate, or create your own custom patterns for haptic feedback so that you can easily recognize certain alerts without actually looking at your screen. So really, the sky's the limit when it comes to jailbreaking and using custom haptic feedback on Apple Watch. Now that brings us to probably one of my favorite items on this list, custom complications. Complications are these little features here that you see, like for the moon status or the time or your activity, but it would be really nice if you could add your own custom complications, like maybe your Twitter followers, or maybe your mentions, number of mentions, or maybe how many unread emails you have, or how many unread text messages you have. Now, of course, you can customize these complications to a slim degree right now. I mean, you can do sort of things like adding a world clock or your battery life and things like that. But it would be nice if you could add your own custom complications, which would lend to a really personal experience when it comes to your Apple Watch face. Noticeably missing from the Apple Watch home screen is a Safari app. Of course, you have things like Mail, you have Music, you have the Weather app, you have Maps, you have SMS or Messages app, you have Photos, all those things, but there's no Safari application to be found on the Apple Watch, which is kind of a bummer to me. I mean, of course, you can use third-party apps like the New York Times and catch up on little tidbits of news and things like that, but I really do want a full-fledged browser on this thing. I know it sounds silly to want to browse the web on a screen that's not much larger than the average Post-it stamp, but hey, I'd browse IDB all day on the Apple Watch if I could. Now, there's one last feature that is absolutely at the top of my list, and probably the most disappointing thing to me about the Apple Watch thus far, and that's the lack of the ability to be able to play music directly from the speaker on the Apple Watch, or podcast directly from the speaker on the Apple Watch. That is a huge disappointment for me. I don't know why I figured you could do that, but when I got my Apple Watch, I finally realized that was... All right, don't make fun of me. Love me some Alanis Morissette, but I finally realized that was not possible. You can change the source, which is, you can change between the Apple Watch being the source or your iPhone being the source of music. You can also change the destination or the output of your music by using the AirPlay option. But unfortunately, that only goes to an AirPlay device. You can't actually play music from the speaker of an Apple Watch. Although you can make phone calls and talk to people using the speaker on the Apple Watch, you cannot listen to music, you cannot listen to podcasts directly on the Apple Watch right now, which is kind of a bummer. So if you want to do that, you need to hook up some Bluetooth headphones. That would be my number one most wanted feature from an Apple Watch jailbreak, playing music directly from the speaker. What about you? What do you want to see from an Apple Watch jailbreak? Let me know what you think in the comments. This is Jeff with I Download Blog.